we may be a few days away from Independence Day. We may be just a few days away from having our democracy back. It is something I and many of my parliamentary colleagues and many of you have worked for over long years. And we have that precious flower of freedom almost in our grasp. Out of the European Union, we will be a more prosperous nation. We will be a more democratic nation, and our country will be more influential in the councils of the world. Our opponents, Remain, have run a depressingly negative campaign, and they've described a European Economic Community circa 1975 and tried to pretend that this is all about trade, that it's all about big business, and that it would be inconvenient for big business if any of the arrangements changed. So they've come up with these fanciful, gloomy forecasts. And as I always say in the debates with them, if you put gloom into the model, you'll get gloom out of the model. We know how you do it. It proves absolutely nothing. I do not believe our trade is at risk in any way. If you look at what has happened since we joined the EEC, now the EU, many rich countries who are not members of the European Union have grown their trade faster and more successfully with the European Union than the United Kingdom has been able to do from inside. And if you want to go to the continent and ask them, would you like new barriers in the way of your very successful exports to the United Kingdom? They don't say yes please, they say certainly not. And most of them are big enough to understand that if we are not to impose any barriers on their exports to us, they cannot impose any new barriers on our exports to them. It is a very easy negotiation to handle. And it's very difficult to understand why big business can't get it. They're meant to be full of very talented negotiators, and surely we can negotiate perfectly satisfactory arrangements as Britain. I just come from a debate where the audience was big business and my opponents were big business, and they'd set it up with 4 on their side and 1 on my side, which I thought was perfectly good odds. I was very happy to take that on. But it was depressing listening to them, because they now have a gloom about them, because they think they might lose, the first time they realise they might lose. And one of them, who I unfortunately can't name, but a senior figure, remarked that he was really very depressed about the whole idea of a referendum, because it may well come to the wrong result as far as he's concerned. And he doesn't think these very complicated matters should be decided by the voters. It should be decided by people like him, and by senior Foreign Office officials and those ministers in our government who are of the Remain persuasion. What I think is so wonderful about this democratic event is it will be decided by the people of the United Kingdom. And that every one of those constituents of mine and of my colleague MPs has the same single vote as that big businessman has. And that, I think, is a deeply liberating experience. And in my conversations with voters around the country, I find a lot of them have understood what this referendum is about in a way in which those big business people still haven't understood. Because this is not a complex or difficult issue. It is not mainly about trade or tariffs or business matters which will be resolved. It is about this fundamental question of what kind of a people are we, how do we wish to govern ourselves, or do we wish to be governed by others? And I can assure all those big business people, much to their dislike no doubt, that many of the public have got it, and increasingly they are saying to myself and the pollsters and others, we want to take back control. We want you, the elected members of Parliament, to be able to decide our taxes. We want you, the elected members of Parliament, to choose our laws. We want you, the elected members of Parliament, to police our borders. And if you, the elected members of Parliament, don't listen to our wishes, do not bend to our will, we will have great pleasure in throwing you out and choosing another lot of MPs who will do what we, the British people, want. It's as simple as that. That is what this referendum is all about. We need to take back control over our taxes because we have been lied to over tax. We were told by Mr. Blair and Mr. Brown and by the coalition that no powers of any serious nature over taxation had passed to the European Union. It was a very central feature of an independent democracy that you, the people, elect us, the representatives, to choose your taxes, and it's often very contentious. Today, this Parliament would love to get rid of the tampon tax by an overwhelming majority. It is not allowed to under European law. Today, I and many of my Conservative colleagues, and I'm sure many Labour colleagues, would like to abolish VAT on fuel. We don't like fuel poverty, our fuel prices are too high. We have to impose a VAT on fuel. We are not allowed to get rid of it all the time we stay in the European Union. And one of the things that maybe those big companies like about our membership is that in the last Parliament, according to Treasury figures, the British government was taken to court on various occasions by big businesses and had to give back £7,000 million of company taxation that we thought was legally collected under statutes passed by this Parliament because it did not please the European lawyers and the European Court of Justice. And we think we needed that money for our public services and our general provision. Worse still, the Treasury, hidden deep in their more honest forecasts before the referendum was called, said that they think they're going to lose another pile of cases in this Parliament, and they think there will be a bare minimum of an additional 7,000 million of company taxation revenue which they will forego as a result of losing those cases in court, cases still being pursued through the European Court of Justice. We need to take back control of our borders, perhaps the most explosive issue that has emerged in this referendum. Now, I and many other members of the Vote Leave campaign have no wish to go to zero immigration. We want to welcome a lot of talented people, well-qualified people, business people, people with investments, people who can come in and get good jobs into our country. We certainly want to invite in students who want to pay good fees in our universities. We want to invite in good faculty members who collaborate in research with our universities, just as we do at the moment with America as well as with the European Union. And we do not believe any of that requires membership of the European Union. But we also want fair immigration, because at the moment, because we can have no controls at all on numbers from the continent of Europe, we have to have much tighter controls for the rest of the world, and we have to accept in a very large number of people who come in and take very low-paid jobs. Bank of England shows in their study that it has depressed low-end wages a bit, when all the main parties would like those wages to go up a bit more, and it obviously makes it more difficult for people in unemployment in Britain to get those jobs because there is this tough price competition coming in all the time. We're now told that, oh, but that's fine because it adds to our economy and these are young people who get jobs and they make a positive contribution to state finances. But it's just not true. I know what it's like as a constituency MP welcoming into our home many people from the European continent. What has it done? It has meant that we've had to build and provide 3 new primary schools in the last 2 years for the school places that their children need. It means that we're at the moment desperately trying to keep up providing new GP facilities and health facilities because of the extra enrolments in the health service. And above all, it means we're having to build thousands of extra houses. Many of them are now bought up by buy-to-let landlords who then rent them out at pretty high rents and put rather more people in than the normal family in normal family homes so that they can afford the total rent. And that is a big problem now for our young people who are being priced out of the housing market, and we're having great difficulty in catching up with the need for more building. We need to take back control of our lawmaking. In order to be an independent country, you need to be able to choose the politicians and the governing party or parties you wish, and they should then be able to put through laws to our mutual pleasure. But in more and more fields now, there are things we cannot do and and there are many bits of legislation we have to put through. So often, Parliament is a rubber stamp. We're presented with the legislation, but if you question what would happen if we vetoed it, we're told, no, don't do that, because it is a legal obligation that you put this through to follow the European rules. Recently, I was invited to appear on Japanese television. They just caught up with the possibility that Brexit might occur. They always assumed it wouldn't, like so many in the city. And there was this shock horror of how could the United Kingdom wish to do this extraordinary thing, leaving this fabulous club which they thought was in their interest that we should be in. And the only way I could think of explaining it to the Japanese audience was to say, I don't think you, Japan, currently go to China and agree with them what your law codes are going to be. And I don't think you currently allow China a veto over what taxes the Japanese public pay or don't pay. And if you're not prepared to do that with China, why do you think my country should want to do that with France and Germany? We get on perfectly well with France and Germany. I think we get on a lot better with them if they're not telling us what taxes and laws we have to impose. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very conscious of the big act coming up. My conclusion is we will be better off when we leave. We will be more influential in the world because they will need to talk to us as an independent country. We will certainly be more democratic when we leave. Far from being isolated, we will get our vote and our voice back on all the main international bodies that the EU has taken from us. Far from being out of Europe, we will still be very engaged as a trading partner, a collaborator, an ally, but they will have to negotiate with us on each issue that they want to do with us, we with them, and we get back our veto so they cannot make us do again things that we don't want to do. That, ladies and gentlemen, means we restore our democracy. We pluck this precious flower, freedom, so that it can be an adornment for our lives again. I deeply regret that so much of my political life has been in a parliament that has been higgled and hamstrung by European controls. And I hope the British public are with me in wishing to cast that off for Britain to be a great democracy again. Yeah.